me now to weigh in on it all, representing Texas's 4th Congressional District, Congressman Pat Fallon. Congressman, it's great to see you. So, Congressman, obviously a lot to chew on here, but first let's start with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. What's your reaction to her recent interview and what she said there?
Well, Stephanie, it's great to be on. Happy New Year. You really just discussed. You want to talk about, dialing up the rhetoric and the pejoratives and saying that people that disagree with you politically or have a, slightly different view of the world are trying to undermine our democracy. By the way, Madam Speaker, we're a representative republic. We're not a democracy. So they get that wrong all the time. It's typical of the hyper-partisan atmosphere which she facilitates and fosters. There's no reaching across the aisle. There's no doing the American thing. She only always does the progressive, regressive thing, and it's really sad.
Yeah, and then what she was specifically referring to is the Freedom to Vote Act, which has been introduced by the Democrats. And part of that would offer automatic voter registration, which would be standard across the nation. It would give voting privileges to the incarcerated, among other things. I mean, what other issues do you take with this?
Well, particularly with H.R. 4, so we had H.R. 1, which was our main priority, which passed out of the House. I, of course, voted against with every Republican, and then it just languished in the Senate, and now they're kind of doubling back to H.R. 4. And the big problem I have with it is H.R. 4 would require all the states to essentially have a preclearance, meaning that if they change their election laws at all, they would have to get permission, a mother may I, if you will, from the federal government. That is not the way the Constitution was written, not the way it was intended. We have 50 laboratories of democracy for a reason, and each state will determine how they will select their presidential electors and electors, and how they're going to run their elections.
Yeah, and then we always see the Democrats kind of tinkering with the way that we have been voting, and it's never in a way that it would make the ballot box more secure. They don't even think people need an ID to go and vote, but yet, they're totally okay with people having to show a vaccine passport to get a burger.
Sure. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say I have this right here. Okay, this is a $100 million lottery ticket I'm holding in my hand. I can redeem this one of two ways. I can walk it in, or I can mail it in. There's nobody in their right mind that would actually mail a $100 million lottery ticket in. So our right to vote is sacrosanct. Why should we have people voting, by mail unless they, have a medical reason to do, they're required to do so because of their medical incapacity. Otherwise, go in and vote so we know who you are. Voter ID is an excellent idea, and it's one that, by the way, would have been eviscerated if H.R. 1 had passed.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you make of what's going on in New York City, where the newly elected mayor is pushing for illegal or non-citizens to be able to vote in elections? I mean, the reason this is a big deal is because what happens in New York City, what happens in the state of the state of New York, it seems to spread across the country. Then goes California, then goes the rest of the states.
Now, Stephanie, it's clearly a naked power grab for one-party rule. And the Democrats are just fine with one-party rule, provided they're the one party that rules. This is an absolute joke. And you want to talk about threatening democracy / a representative republic, allowing foreign nationals to, that's what non-citizens equal, foreign nationals. Allowing foreign nationals to vote in our elections is absolute madness, and it must be stopped.
And to be more specific here, it would be for the state, not federal elections, okay? But still, this is just a step in that direction. And it's not like, the Democrats haven't suggested this before. We've heard people on the left call for this. This is what they want. They want this in our national elections.
No, there's no doubt. They have a pesky thing, that they have to overcome federally, at least, with something called the Constitution, which they believe is living and breathing. And I believe the paper that Constitution was written on died hundreds of years ago. It is set in stone, and there is a process to change the Constitution. It's called amendments. If they want to try that, they're welcome to it. But to have anything lower than that, the people in New York have to step up and say, no, you know what? The only people that should vote in our elections and have a say are the folks that are actually fellow citizens that have, as of all people, Jack Tapper just pointed out in your clip, taken an oath to this country. If you're an American living in Mexico, they're not going to allow you to vote in any capacity there, and I don't blame them.
And then think of the message that this sends around the world while we're dealing with this border crisis that's being ignored by Team Biden.
Well, yeah, listen, the border crisis was created by Joe Biden's wokeness and his weakness. We had Wait Mexico, and that became catch and release. We had Build the Wall, that became Open the Gate. And we had deport criminals, and that became cartels run amok. And Americans, you're not safe if you're not free. And there's been a spike in crime because of the defund the police effort and allowing the drug cartels to control our southern border. We've had 2 million illegal border crossings in 2021. That was a trickle under President Trump that then became 4 to 5 times worse, and now it's back to being a flood. And it's because of Joe Biden's horrendous border policies that we have a crisis, now not even a crisis, Steph, a catastrophe on our southern border.
Yeah, and then we hear from the State Department and even Biden, they're virtue signaling and pretending they actually care about human trafficking as they've posted this from the State Department. It says, during National Human Trafficking Prevention Month, let us resolve to counter injustice and fortify our commitment to pursue dignity and freedom for all people. And then we have a quote here from Biden. It says, our mission to combat human trafficking must always be connected to our broader efforts to advance equity and justice across our society. Well, if they were really serious about it, well, maybe they would take a trip down to the border and at least meet with our Border Patrol agents. Maybe VP Harris could make a little more time to get out there and do the job that she was tapped to do.
Now, this administration has proved they're very good at wordsmithing and very poor at actually implementing policies that would achieve objectives, or at least their stated objectives. Steph, 30%, it's estimated by experts, up to 30% of the young women that migrate from Central America and Southern Mexico illegally into our country are raped or sexually assaulted along the journey. We've had a huge spike in human trafficking and really essentially sexual slavery because of this mass unlawful migration. Joe Biden is facilitating it. He should be ashamed of himself. If you wanted to stop human trafficking, secure our border. That would put a huge dent in this horrendous and awful and criminal, really an inhumane practice.
Yeah, well, they don't want to seem to connect the dots here that when you have a border crisis, that's going to lead to an increase in human trafficking. And so they just completely ignore it, yet they'll post these things on the State Department, which is great that they bring attention to it. But what are they going to do about it? And so far, it doesn't seem like they're taking it serious. Well, Congressman, we're out of time. We're going to leave it here. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. God bless. Take care.
Of course. Thank you.